hoes been asking for me on the road for no.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am your host, JT Matthews at JTMatthews01 on Twitter, and I am here with the illustrious sports doctor, Nicholas Manning, at Manning1 on Twitter. How we doing? How you doing, Doc?
No, Dr_N Manning.
Man, I'm so bad at this one. I don't know. It's been
you add me for some reason to your you add your one to my one.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I'll write it down someday.
It's all good.
Wait. Do it one more time.
Dr_N Manning on the Twitter.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right.
You're the one. You're the one with the one because it's like
I'm the one.
I'm the one with
the one. I'm him.
Is that Diddy?
Is that what they say?
Diddy? I'm him. Yep. That's what we do.
How you doing, Doc?
I'm good, man. I'm good. See, as evidenced by the ticker thing right there we go. I'm doing well. The temperature is rising. With the temperature comes positive, cool stuff. Spring seasons. Got a little men starting flag football. Be super exciting. Got kiddos starting soccer. Last go around with a fantastic duo. I myself can play a little softball because softball's made for old people and leftovers. So I am both of those now. And so I'm excited about that. And we go on a trip on Friday.
We do.
So I'm super pumped about that. So no live show next week because your boys are going to be on a cruise in the Bahamas. And I don't want to. I don't want to next week while we're Bahama-ing.
Yeah, no, probably wouldn't be the most high quality stream. I am looking forward to getting there. I'm not looking forward to the travel accommodations just because it's like a red eye and then a 5 a.m. layover with 8 kids between the two of us. So
8 kids, 11 and under. So yeah, not exactly a group of regulation, but you know what? I'm going to deal with it because I need it.
Yeah. We need to recharge those batteries, so we're going to do it. But until then, we're going to talk Denver sports. And let's jump off with some Avs and Nuggets talk. So we've talked a little bit about them individually. Let's talk about them together a little bit as they're kind of at the same point in their seasons, right? You're kind of coming up to the end of a 82-game season. You're in contention for a top playoff spot. Both teams currently. Avs last night got a good win against Vancouver.
They did,
which they needed to kind of stay in that hunt and just make sure that everyone knows that they're still present in this conversation after a bad road trip. Your Nuggets kick off the season, I think, against the Washington Wizards tomorrow night at home, which should be a win. We'll see. But if I would had to put money on it, I'd guess that it would be a win. So let's see. See how these guys come out of the break, how they continue to build some forward momentum. But let's talk about expectations for these teams. And maybe we'll narrow in first on the Nuggets. What's kind of your expectation for the end of this season? What do you expect them to accomplish? Do you expect them to be getting into form as the playoffs roll around? Do you think it'll be more of a grind? This team hasn't exactly been that picture of consistency throughout the season. And we talked a little bit about being the hunted man when you're the champ. Are we going to see more of that? Are we going to see them round to form? And where do they end in the standings going into the playoffs, do you think?
Yeah, I think that they will turn it up. before when we had talked about it maybe a week or two ago, my thought was I think they just want to get in, and see where it goes, and then kind of go from there. I think now, kind of looking at it and getting a lay of the land, I think that they're going to really try and play for seeding. I think, getting a 1 through 3, a spot at the end. So for between 1 and 3 in the Western Conference, I think should be preferred. I have confidence that this team can win on the road. That said, we do have probably the best home court advantage in basketball, considering the altitude, etc. So, if it's game 7 and you're playing the Lakers, for instance, or the Clippers, make them come up to altitude and run around versus, having more games there. So I think that they'll finish in the top 3. I think pride will kick in at some point, and they'll want to show everyone that they are capable again of winning an NBA championship. So that's kind of the totality of that. I think. I bet that they, mind you, if everyone is healthy. So there's questions about KCP, whether or not his hammy's feeling good. And then, Jamal has some lingering stuff.
Yeah.
Is everyone going to be back in the lineup? And if so, I think that they'll come out punching. I think this team knows what it needs. This is the team, right? So trade deadlines and all that good stuff, they are who they are. So, it's an opportunity, I think, for people to be settled, guys to know that they're going to be on the team and start working on the roles. So that's what I think when it comes to end of the year, prognostication. I don't know that I would say like that they're destined for the 1.
Sure.
I think Minnesota's playing really damn good basketball, and so is Oklahoma City. And right now the Nuggets are kind of outside of that looking in. But it's teams that they can beat. So if there were a time to drive that point home, they should, for sure.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly, but I think the Nuggets had one of the hardest schedules up to this point into the season,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they have one of the easier schedules coming out of the break here.
Yep.
And I think that's going to bode well for them. A lot of home games, and we know how the Nuggets historically have played at home. They've been pretty dominant. I expect that they will finish. I would say top 3 is really fair. I think they push for the top seed. I don't know that they'll ultimately get it. But I also wonder how much maneuvering Mike Malone's willing to do to kind of get a matchup or matchups that he likes on the road. We saw him do this when the team was younger. We saw
years
him.
Ago. Yeah.
I mean, it must have been like 2019 or something. Now I think it was before the bubble where we kind of put ourselves up against Portland.
Yep.
In that path that seemed a little bit easier, which ultimately ended up in a series loss, but a good series nonetheless. It's something that I would be interested to see if they will go back to. Now that we've been there, are we just saying bring on whoever we can, where we're willing to face whoever shows up and we're matched up against, or do you have a little gamesmanship? Do you kind of angle for matchups you'd rather see? I could see it going either way. I think the Nuggets are good enough to not have to worry about positioning themselves that way. At the same time, if you feel like you have an edge up against an opponent, in the first round, and you think you can make a short series of it, that rest matters, especially with guys that, most of our guys outside of Jamal have played the majority of the games of the regular season, knock on wood. Does that rest? Are you looking forward to getting some rest in between series if you can, if you think you have that matchup? Maybe getting ahead of myself there, but
Sure.
it's just something that we've seen it in the past, and so I just wonder if it will rear its head again. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know that they will look for matchup necessarily, but I do think that seeding will matter.
Right.
I think as long as nothing, health isn't the question. They would rather be healthy and be the 7 seed than be beaten up and be the 2. That part I think we agree with. I think, I don't know that. Do you want Phoenix as your first round matchup? Is that like,
right?
Is that something that you're looking forward to? They have been able to beat Phoenix over the last season and a half, right? So you look at the series last year and then and the regular season so far this year. So I don't know that they're afraid to do that, but why not, right? Like, why not aim for an easier path to getting where you want to go? That said, in the end, they're gonna have to beat everyone they play to get there, and health will be paramount. So I do think that the health question being answered and being managed successfully will trump everything. I also think there's a prideful group. You saw it on the road in Boston, right? Handing the Celtics their first home loss. You've seen it in a few matchups with the Lakers, etc. They know when to turn it on. And I think especially in the division matchups that are coming up, they'll want to remind these hopefuls, where's the trophy lie? We got the ring, we're the current, and we want you to remember that. If you can add some doubt on the way to the playoffs, that's good. That's maybe that's maybe a game, a series, if you're able to make them slow out the gates because you've thumped them pretty good the last time or two that you met them. That psychological warfare, I think, is a really good thing to go. Like you said, gamesmanship. That to me is what I would expect this group to do. They're a little salty, which I like. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's yeah, that's true.
There we go. I think Mark, you nailed it. What up again, my man? That right now seems like the matchup that's caused them the most grief, at least this season, which is weird because the Nuggets essentially have been the CEO of Staples for a while since they own that center, or crypto, or whatever it is.
Crypto.
Yeah, which is weird. Just stop it.
It
So I like that. I see, right? Like, if we can avoid by winning, minimize our risks to play this team, or at least if we do play this team, I want to be at home, right? So how can we make sure that we finish on top of? I don't think that the Nuggets are scared to play in Minnesota, but if we can have home court advantage against teams of the same ilk or the same fortitude, I think that we'll want to be able to do that. You want it over Phoenix, and you're going to want it over the Clippers.
Yeah.
So I think that those are two avenues that I expect this team to really push.
For sure. Let's shift our focus back to the Avs then and ask the same questions. What's our expectation for the end of the season? I can kind of kick it off and just say, last night was a good test and a good reminder that this team can win games and not just outscore opponents. They played really good defense. They played the goaltending was phenomenal. Georgiev had quite the game, made some really huge clutch plays, made some really big saves. And we got some secondary scoring from Brian Johansson, who really had kind of been a bit of a disappointment coming there throughout the season. Coming here, there were higher expectations that he would kind of solidify that second line. And it's been a little bit iffy. I think there are still some positive things he brings. He's a good face-off man. If you need to win in your own zone and on a, especially on special teams, PK, power play. But it was good to see some contribution from him. Hopefully he can kind of keep that rolling. If he can, that just adds an additional layer to this team.
Right.
I think they're going to push. I think they're going to push for the division. As far as overall seeding, I think I expect them to be, have home ice advantage early on, at least in the playoffs, if not deeper. They kind of faltered through their last road trip. You kind of see some parallels with the Nuggets and the Avs there. They had some tough opponents on the East Coast. You're kind of to the dog days of the season, so I try not to read too much into that, but I think that they are primed to kind of push for the same thing. Our stars are cooking still. I think you can rely on those guys. It's going to be a matter for them. It's going to be a matter of secondary scoring and goaltending, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with Ryan Johansson, the hope was, coming over that he was going to be able to help try and fill that. So even if you couldn't fill it to Naz Kadri level, right? Like we don't expect anyone to come in at that level, but this season Johansson has 22 points, which for a seasoned vet, not great. -7 in the plus minus. So I think for this team to go where they want to go, him and Ross Colton are going to have to be two guys that lift up the team. I'm actually pretty interested now to get your thoughts on Zach Parise, and that move was an afterthought, and some people even were upset by it. It's a really cheap draft picks kind of deal, but some people have gotten why would we do that? That's a waste of a move. It's low cost, high reward potentially. Maybe he regains some skills of yesteryear. I think that guys of that ilk have to step up. I think for this team to be able to win, those guys. Finally, though, just to be able to put a pin in it, Arturo Lehkonen. So I can't count on Val to come back. I don't think you do. So Val essentially is that's a added bonus. It's gravy, right? So, but Lehkonen is a guy that has produced, has played really well. You really need that second line offense to be able to really push. And when he gets pushed to that second line, he's got to produce. Right now, not great. 16 points. Obviously, injuries have been challenging. So yeah, I think those are a couple folks that really need to step it up for this team to be successful.
Yeah, I think the addition of Parise, I think, was interesting. I think there's some legs to it, but I think it's more a postseason addition than it is a regular season addition, right? You see with teams a lot when you have established top guys, you like to bring in veteran guys that kind of fill in those other roles, the guys that have been there, guys that you can rely on in clutch situations. I think Parise is that. Again, as far as contribution for regular season, I don't know exactly what you can realistically expect. I think he's going to be involved in the offense. I think he's going to feel his way through the games as they go, and just kind of, when you start mid-season, you gotta kind of find your legs a little bit, and you got to find that chemistry. And it seems like it's starting to click a little bit, but there's still some work to be done there. And then, additionally, we just have to see if they add another piece, right? The trade deadline hasn't eclipsed for the Avalanche yet. And so we just have to kind of wait and see. There's a potential that we add a second line center, that shakes up the lineups a little bit. And so where people filter out and land will be interesting if that does occur. I think this team's good enough to win it as is, but I think it will be more of an uphill battle if they don't find a more reliable secondary scorer. Lehkonen, I think, that's a great observation. He's been hurt. He had a neck injury, and those are scary. And I'm glad he took his time to get back kind of in the lineup and healthy. Since he's been back, he's been nothing but productive. And so I anticipate that he'll continue on that path. The kind of game that he plays works well with this team, just because I don't think there's a lot of guys that replicate that same play style. He's just gritty. He gives full effort all the time. He's, doesn't mind mixing it up a little bit and takes chances on pucks. I think that's really fun. I really enjoy watching his play style. And I think he's a good defensive, forward. So I think him to step it up would be big for this team. And I think we'll see that moving forward. I still think you need probably one more veteran guy to step it up if you don't make a move. And I think you've got to look at Johansson and say, we brought you in to fill this role. Now we got to see you fill it. If that's the route they go, could get a little dicey, could get a little scary at times. It's going to come down to your matchups in the playoffs and experience and how much composure you can keep. Last year was a good example of kind of a tough matchup and, just guys that weren't in a good headspace going into that Seattle matchup. And we ended up getting bounced. So I don't want to get overconfident with this group, but I feel like there's enough pieces to be good and productive. It's just a matter of when you get to the deeper rounds of the playoffs, do you have enough ammo?
Yeah, I mean, that's this team in the Avalanche, it's a little bit different than the Nuggets. We've talked about that before. The Nuggets were good enough to not do anything.
Yeah.
The Avalanche are not good enough if they want to win this season to not do anything. So then the question's going to be, are they really aiming for it this year, or are they trying to create a window where, maybe you build to it, you get back to the semifinals or the Western Conference Finals, and that's a good, recalibration or a remeasurement of the steps. And then next year is the year, so we don't have to give up assets. We can do it through free agency. But I think that they will. I think Super Joe has always been, aggressive in the sense he will make moves if people or guys fit for what they need. He's done it pretty much every season, win, lose, or draw. And this is a good team. So to not do some work to be able to provide some depth scoring, I think would be a disservice, and Nathan MacKinnon, I have no doubt, has made it clear to management saying, hey, we need to be better. I want to win. And I think they will, whether or not that's going to go to a championship. I'm a little bit more bullish on the idea of them being, second, making it to the second round, having an opportunity, maybe, a good puncher's chance to make it to the Western Conference Finals. That's kind of where I sit right now. Obviously subject to change if for some way, shape, or form they're able to get an impactful piece at the deadline, then I'm gonna feel pretty good about that increased chance. I think they have the pieces to compete with anyone, as they showed last night. Vancouver is the top seed in the West right now, so you went and handled some business and made a statement, which this team hasn't done a ton of.
Right.
And so now you have another opportunity, I think, to reward the players that are currently playing with, support and getting in some more talent. So those are the guys that I think need to step up. Do you have anyone different? Do you have any other, additions to the Get Yo Crap Together squad?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably if I'm focusing on one or two players, you got to look at guys that have been there and guys that know the system. I think those are what you should, guys that you can kind of like hang your hat on and just say like, hey, you guys have been here. We've done this before. I think guys like Sam Girard and Bowen Byram are two guys that we need a little bit more from. Sam Girard played really great defense last night. He had some great some plays on special teams. Had a nice play against JT. I can't think of his last name right now, but the leading scorer for Vancouver kind of knocked him off the puck, cleared it out of the zone, kind of when they had some momentum on the power play. It's nice to see guys like that stepping up, especially Girard, who took some time away from the team to deal with some mental health stuff as well, and so. Good to see those guys kind of getting back into the mix. Byram, we drafted him high, expecting, I don't know if you can say, a top flight defenseman, but at least a top two pairing defenseman. And he has flashes and moments where he looks like that, and then he has flashes of moments where he kind of is a little bit underwhelming. And so I think if you can get consistency out of those second line defensemen, you're putting yourself in a lot better place to win competitive games.
Yeah, exactly. They have to raise the floor. So not necessarily going to get superstar talent, right? They got to raise the floor, guys. Like it can't just be Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, and Cale Makar, and those are the guys that are carrying that. It's nice to have 3 of the top 10 players in the world. But 3 guys doesn't make a team, and you saw that against the Kraken, right? It just wasn't enough. They had more balanced scoring on each line, and right now this team needs it. So not only increased, opportunities in play, maybe you're looking for some guys to come back from injury, O'Connor, etc. My question for you really quick is off cuff. Gabe Landeskog was skating a few days ago, open forum, open to the fans. So was out there, which means something. Are you buying that Captain O'Captain may be back for a playoff run?
Yeah, I think so. Like it ultimately is going to come down to him. It's kind of how we felt about Jamal Murray a few years ago when it was like, could he push it? Will he play in the playoffs? Could he have? Maybe. Yeah. Would it have? I don't know how much impact to expect from that. I think for morale, it's good. I think obviously for what he does and kind of the player that he is so chippy and in front of the net and, backs his guys. I don't know if he'll lose a level of that physicality just with being off the ice for so long, or if he'll be so much of that. There has to be so much mental going into that you've got to overcome. And we saw that with Jamal too, right? Like he needed to be able to trust that knee before he felt confident enough to go out there. Could he have gone out there for that playoff series? Yeah, probably. But was it the best choice for him moving forward? No. Little different with Gabe because he's a bit older, and maybe wants to get in there and contribute to another cup chance. Who knows when that window will close? One injury to a key player, and you're back in the middle of the pack. So there's a timeline difference between those two. But I wonder how that mental will come into play. I know, I think skating's one thing, no contact. Right. It's to kind of get you back in the feel and kind of into shape to be prepared to play in a game, but that still is going to be a long way off. So I don't know that I would count on it. I would be excited to see it. I don't know that I would count on it. And even if he is back, I don't know exactly what kind of expectations you put on it. But I think overall, I would be excited to see him back. I think he could contribute. He just has a way around the net, a feel around the net that a lot of guys don't have naturally. And so, even just having him out there in key situations, just kind of being that screener and going for deflections and playing hard in front of the net, I think he adds something that we don't necessarily have, at least not throughout each line of this squad.
Yeah, and it's even 80%, right? Assuming that he wouldn't cause more damage. If he's 80%, still better than your third winger, right? Like, it raises the boats again. And I think the other part is leadership. It's hard to lead when you're not playing. So the fact that he would be out in pads again, hey, follow me, boys, we got it. That part I think is something that was difficult to replace, and the attention that he'll get. It's guys might have a delay coming off of rotating to their guy because of the respect that they have for Gabe and what he can do down low. And so I think that there is it's a good addition. It doesn't hurt, as long as barring all the medical stuff, and it's something to look forward to. I think he's going to try. I don't think they go through all of this. It's not a dog and pony show outfit. The Avalanche, right? That's not the hockey culture to like, is he or won't he? It's not LeBron saying that he's going to retire or potentially retire just for kicks, right? So him being out and practicing, I think they know and believe that there's an opportunity, a strong possibility that he will be cleared to play. Again, like you said, will he be mentally ready? And hockey players are different. So it very much is a macho sport. Hopefully they're going to use some science to be able to help support that decision-making, but I wouldn't be shocked if he goes out there and there's no chance that he'll be 100% by that time or through that time. And as long as he feels good about the risk of hurting himself again, then I think he plays.
Yeah.
It's just imagine at ball, right? And it's, starting lineup, right? And it's like, Gabe landed, like, oh my God, the feels in there would be just. I bet that wins game one of that first series by itself. For sure.
And it's just important to remember, like, Nathan MacKinnon is arguably the best player in the world right now. But Gabe Landeskog is still your captain for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, as good as Nate is, and as much as he galvanizes that team, Gabe's been sitting on the sidelines for almost 2 years now, and he's still the captain. You know, that C hasn't passed on, and so I think that it speaks volumes to the respect that franchise has for Gabe, but also that the other players have for Gabe. You're not hearing Nate complaining that Gabe holds that C, you know, and he has every right to push against that a little bit, right? He's been available, he's been there, he's been like we said, galvanizing this team, spurring them on to win single-handedly. He could easily be the captain. You know, the team goes kind of how Nate goes. But yeah, I mean, the lift that you would get from having a guy like Landeskog back is, you know, you can't calculate it, right? You know, you just have to go out there and see that impact and allow it to kind of, you know, flow through that locker room. It'll be fun to see if it happens. Again, I don't know that we can count on it, but kind of shifting gears back to the Nuggets, we'll ask the same questions. I know we're bouncing back a little bit back and forth, but outside of the starting five, you know, is there anyone that you want to see elevate their game to get this team to the next level? You know, I think there's questions about this second group, who can be a real contributor, who's the difference maker, bringing them into a game in a playoff series. You know, do we have faith in the young guys? Is there someone that you think, you know, can step up and kind of elevate those minutes?
Yeah, I think, and the reason why we're talking about these two teams at the same time is they're really kind of in parallel spots, right? Recent championships, good teams, you know, not playing maybe up to their capabilities, but right?
Arguable MVPs
for top
on both
seeds.
teams.
Yep. Yeah, kind of look at Landeskog like Aaron Gordon, right? He isn't the best player on the team. He's not scoring the most, but without him, right, and all of the gritty things that he does, you're not, you know, it would be pretty difficult for you to win a series, let alone a championship. I think if you know, AG weren't or missed some significant time, his versatility, his willingness, all that good stuff is it would make it really difficult for this team. As for the Nuggets, who do I think really needs to step up? I'm really excited to see what Peyton Watson does. I think that guy is will be a difference maker because of his ability to guard and defend, especially in the playoffs. So, you know, Bruce Brown was helpful because he was feisty. He could, you know, guard positions 1 through 3 essentially, and was willing to do what he needed to do to get what he needed to get done. And Peyton Watson has kind of developed a little bit into that. Obviously, probably not the same ball handler and distributor as Bruce was. They don't ask him to do that. That said, he can impact the game on the glass or in the, you know, the defensive backcourt. Like, he can be there to be able to clean up some misses. You know, guys get beat on, and his help is there. We've seen what happens sometimes when he gets lost. You know, it's hard to get him railed back in. He's a young player, still trying to figure it out. But when he's been on, right, one, it sparks energy because he does things that he doesn't need the ball for.
Yep.
And his ability to exert good energy on defense and take the tougher matchup allows everyone else to kind of slide down. Then you got AG on the next matchup, right? Or vice versa. That feels really good to have those two guys, you know, guarding Durant and Booker in a 2-man game. Like, I feel pretty good about that matchup, right? Like, you feel, or Anthony Davis and LeBron, you feel like those two can compete and give you an opportunity to get stops. So I think that he is someone that has to contribute because they need him to. And you don't know that he will. You know, is he capable? Sure. But I don't know that he's capable to do it consistently because he hasn't had to yet.
Right.
And so they haven't put him in positions to really rely on him, but they do now. And he's a guy that I hope continues to earn the trust of Malone and steps up. So that to me is the outside of the starting 5, and probably even more than like MPJ. Yeah, I saw the team win without him, at least without making baskets, and he disappears for stretches. You can get offense from other guys. Obviously, if MPJ's on, you're the likelihood of you winning is significantly higher. So we're not arguing that part. But what Peyton Watson brings on defense and rebounding it's a significant impact. And so that's who I got. What about you?
Yeah. I think that if Peyton balls out, he raises the ceiling for that squad quite a bit. I think if and I like his ability to match up with some guys. I think it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts his game in the playoffs, depending on his matchup. If they start targeting him with some bigger bodies, like I think he would struggle against a guy like LeBron James, who's more physical, has a little more weight to him, is smart, it controls the pace of the game. I think a guy like that is a tougher matchup than a guy like Kevin Durant, who's more of a jump shooter, less physically imposing. They kind of had the same build, Durant and Watson. Watson, unfortunately, has got a 7 foot plus wingspan, so that really can disrupt some guys, especially shooters. But I think if he's playing well and he's impacting the game offensively, if he's consistently hitting his shots, whether it be 2 or 3 shots a game or a little bit more than that, those are productive minutes. I think Reggie Jackson is probably who I'm looking at to step his game up a little bit more. I like Reggie Jackson. I think he's been a good addition to this team. I think he brings some streakiness that is exciting. It can be extremely underwhelming at times, but it can be super electric at times too. I'm interested to see, kind of how he rises or falls in the playoffs. He hasn't been in a significant place to make an impact in a playoff series for quite a while. He's been a part of some teams that have been in the playoff, in playoff contention, but I don't think he's been seen as a major cog for any of those teams. And so, as kind of your sixth man, essentially, off the bench, he's got big shoes to fill for Bruce. The departure of Bruce Brown, as much as Bruce Brown wasn't a shooter or scorer, naturally he was able to do that in clutch moments, right? He created opportunities for himself with off-ball movement. He hit his threes when he needed to, for the most part. He defended at a high level in clutch scenarios. I want to see if Reggie can kind of rise to that. I've seen moments where Reggie plays really nice defense, and I've seen him where he plays some turnstile defense, right? And so I want some consistency there. If he can be a consistent scorer off the bench, offensively, there's not many teams that can hold a candle to what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got to be able to hold his own on defense against some of these top end guard talents. The Western Conference, as far as guards go, is stacked. You're not going to run into any team that's got some scrubs, at that position. Like Jamal Murray is having a great season, was not going to get into the All-Star game with the statistics that he had, and they're great. And it's just because you have, your Steph Currys of the world, guys that are established, guys that are putting up crazy numbers, Devin Booker scoring 70 points or 67 points or whatever he scored, a few weeks back. It's just every night there's going to be a dogfight at that position. And I want Reggie to step up and let's see what he's made of. He's a veteran now. He's accepted his role. He seems to be happy here in Denver. This is his hometown. I'd love to see him be the hometown hero a little bit in these playoff series. Maybe not carrying this team to a championship, but contributing just as much as everyone contributed last year to winning a championship. That's who I would kind of target. I think Peyton Watson is a great option. And of course, Christian Brown. We haven't really talked about Christian Brown, but he's a riser too. These guys rise in clutch times, clutch moments for this team. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out at the end of the day. But
especially because those are guys that essentially could have brought you back veteran talent, and this group sees enough in them for what they've done or what they can project them to do, to not need to go do that. It wasn't something that they felt they had to do because of what you got in house. It'll be interesting to see if Christian Brown kind of regains the the consistent tenacity that he had before.
For sure.
And I think they will. I think as this team ramps up, I think, like you said, these guys are some gamers, and I think they know what's online, and I think they're motivated to be contributors. It's one thing to get a ring, right? It's one thing to feel like you earned it. And Peyton Watson was a part of the team, absolutely deserves a ring, but wasn't an active contributor night in and night out for the team. Now you are, right? And so it feels different. And I think he's a guy that'll be interesting to see how he chips in. Same with Reggie Jackson, right? I don't know how many minutes he got in the finals last year, but I bet I can count them on a hand.
Yeah.
And so, he got a ring, but he didn't contribute necessarily on the court on game day. So I think that those two
Christian
guys,
did.
they play well.
Right? Like Christian was the one who contributed. Right. And so it makes me more hopeful that when we get to those times that he will still be able to do that, even if he hasn't grown significantly as a player this season. I think, with Julian Strother's health, if he comes back into the lineup for that second group, I don't know that he'll be someone you rely on at all in the playoffs. He may not even get minutes in the playoffs. But I think at least during the regular season, that opens up some more opportunities for Christian instead of being your primary ball handler and scorer for that second group in a lot of situations. Strother allows you to kind of space out that group a little bit more. He can draw guys to the corners. He can draw guys to the edges. Christian's a good straight line driver, that can get up and elevate around the rim. I'd like to see maybe some of that confidence come back in the regular season and then just roll back into the playoffs and be a contributor at what he does, which is play it with energy, play at a high level defensively, and not back down.
That's why I'm not as worried about that. I'm not worried about his, what's his role going to be or how is he going to show up, because he has shown what his role will be and how he'll show up. So I agree. I think he's a guy that what you're going to get, or have a good idea of what you're going to get, and so now it's just getting it.
Yep. Well, let's move off of the Nugs and Avs for a little bit, and let's jump into the Rockies. So we got spring training coming up. Has it officially started? I feel like they're
guys have reported.
Yeah,
pitchers and catchers. The first game, I believe, is Friday. So baseball's here.
Baseball's here. What are you looking for this squad moving kind of into training camp? Are there any storylines that you're going to be paying attention to? Any guys in particular that you're keeping an eye out for? Spring training's it's hard to kind of keep track of. There's a lot of games, a lot of practices, and it's hard to get a measure of guys in that amount of time. But anyone that you'll be kind of keeping an eye on, or any position group specifically that you'll be tracking?
Yeah, this team is interesting. So they aren't necessarily constructed to compete at a high level right now, but you have some intriguing players. So Ezequiel Tovar is the young shortstop from Venezuela, 22 years old. Fangraphs thinks he's going to hit anywhere between like 16 and 20 home runs this year. Relatively slight still, so still building and growing into his body. He's the guy that made them feel comfortable to move on from Trevor Story. So if you know how good Trevor was, that's a heavy responsibility, and I think he's a guy that this team needs to be able to build around. And so you're hopeful that he'll be able to do it. Chris Bryant essentially is the crux of all of it. The guy hasn't played very much, has been injured significantly or missed significant amount of time in his 2 seasons as a Rocky. You're giving him a very large contract, particularly compared to kind of everyone else on the roster. When he has played, the team actually is pretty competitive. So his impact on the roster when he plays in games is pretty significant. Helps lengthen the lineup, right? It's a guy that provides security for guys hitting ahead of him. They'd rather pitch to whoever's in the spot before him, then walk him and pitch him, right? So if you're before him, you're going to get some good opportunities. So, and then Brendan Rodgers should be back. So that he's a guy that was really coming into his own for a while, messed up his shoulder, and really wasn't able to contribute at all last year. So those are guys that I think keep an eye on for sure. But there's names like guys like Brenton Doyle. Most fans won't know who that is. So he's playing center field, really good defensively, stolen base threat. If you're interested, go into Fangraphs. It's a pretty good kind of statistical, all-encompassing website that covers baseball. And the Rockies really have a lot of guys that are going to be in double digits projected. Home runs, solid averages, but nothing wows you. There's not really guys on this roster right now that will be the guy. And then maybe the discouraging part is outside of Ezekiel Tovar and the Rockies projected lineup. If you were to take kind of their view of it, the next youngest guy is 25, which is young, but when you're really relying on a revolution of young talent to step forward, having guys that are 33, 32, 29, 37, and some of your core younger guys are 27 and 29.
Yeah.
Not a lot of upside here with those guys. So that's some concern there. Your best two pitchers from last year had Tommy John surgery.
Yep.
So Antonio Sensatella and German Marquez. So, those are two guys that you've paid that want to be here, that are good pitchers who will miss the likelihood of all season. Maybe German comes back September, August, September. But really, it's probably ramping up, getting some innings in. You're not going to see Sensatella until next year.
Right.
The bullpen is some guys, so it's not. There's not a ton to be excited about. The good things, though, is one, keep sucking, keep getting high draft picks. The JT way, right? And then there is some good young talent that is or could be coming. So that part I'm pretty excited about. They've had the opportunity to be able to draft pretty early. And so there's going to be some players I think that can contribute for this team in a few years, but it will be a few years. And the question I think we're going to be asking and answering for this team is, can they lose 100 again?
Right.
Which is, it's not a great thing to feel like, hey, we're wondering if we're going to all-time suck. And you hope not. The players don't deserve it. They're trying their best, all that good stuff. It's just really poor decisions in getting this team there. But I bet that they'll come out of the gate and probably be pretty competitive and probably get our hopes up. I'm going to get super excited about Nolan Jones and like, oh, he's going to be the man now. And then they tank and all that good stuff. So I know what might happen, but you know what? I'm going to let myself fall into it anyway. I'm going to give some, positive regard for what they got going on over there at Blake Street. But not a ton of excitement. There's not really guys who, they're going to stink, but you get to see some good players, but not a ton of, almost on the cusp elite talent. This isn't the Astros of yesteryear that lost. This isn't even the Rangers who kind of did the same thing. They had really competent talent evaluators and a system that really developed players. Rockies don't have either of those.
Yeah. I can tell you what I'm looking forward to, and it's probably an indictment of my fanship as a Rockies fan. I'm excited to see Charlie Blackmon in the DH spot. I'm excited to watch him always. I just love his ability to fight off pitches and try and find something that he just really wants to hone in on. And it is kind of sad in a way that is my takeaway for this season, at least going into the season. Maybe part of that is me not putting as much effort into knowing this team. And I'll definitely be putting in some effort as the season rolls around. But Charlie's just been a mainstay for so long of all those teams that we love so much with Arenado and Story and those guys, LeMahieu, those guys that have moved on. Charlie's still here. He's one of our homegrown guys that we've just kind of get to watch throughout his career. And I think he still brings something, for a guy that's older, a little long in the tooth. I think he can still bring, some hitting and some, at the very least, some leadership to a team that maybe has very little direction at the moment.
Yep. I mean, it really is. It really is. And they've earned the doubt. They have some good prospects coming up. Not a lot of pitchers, obviously. Again, some mismanagement and resources to build up, that part of the roster, and even the ones that they have. Depending on what site you go to for review, not a ton of top elite talent. Maybe some good, competitive, solid contributor, guy that you want on your team for a decade, but you got to have a couple stars. It's really hard to win, even in baseball where there's more guys that are contributing night in and night out. They have some good players that are on the cusp. Zach Veen is super fast, phenomenal defensive outfielder. He's young. He's 22. Same with, Sterling Thompson, who's a outfielder / infielder, really good swing, all that good stuff. That said, you need guys to stop good hitting. And, they selected Chase, I think it's Dullender from college last season with the 9th pick, and has started really well in the minors, but they don't really have the development plan. Most players, when they leave Colorado, say, they get to the new place and it's the first time that they've understood their spin rate, or, things like that, that even if I know about it at my level of baseballism now, the kids should know. So really, if they were going to put money in that, stop spending it on free agents and that kind of stuff, save those monies and really develop a program that helps your minor league players grow, because they're going to get hitting. They're going to grow good hitters. It's the right organization. They do that pretty well.
Yeah.
You got to be able to build your own, especially if signing guys isn't in the cards, and for them to neglect that still is just it's cheeks, as the kids say. Right?
Facts.
Facts.
And it's just a team we're gonna cover the Rockies as the season goes along, but they've got to do something noteworthy to kind of make it into the zeitgeist, so to speak. So, we'll be keeping an eye on them, but it's up to them to kind of blow us away a little bit. Hopefully we'll catch some moments of magic at the very least for this team. But in the meantime, let's talk about a team that's been bad for a while, but is still the most popular team in Denver, and that is the Denver Broncos. We're going to talk just about the draft a little bit. We're draft guys. We enjoy the coverage, the combine and the pro days and all of the stuff leading up to draft night. And we're going to talk about some of our, I've called them draft crushes. I don't know that one of my guys is a draft crush as much as I'm intrigued by him. But we've got a few each. Do you want to start, Doc? You want me to start?
No, why don't you go for it? I usually steal the thunder in some of these. This was your idea. I want what you got.
Okay. All right. So I did 3, and we'll start with 1. I'll go from my least, my smallest crush to my largest crush. How about that?
Okay.
I'll start with tackle out of a team that I'm not a fan of, called Michigan. A late draft prospect. His name is Ladarius Henderson. He's probably projected to be more guard than tackle at the NFL level. He's about 6'4", 310 pounds. He's got long arms, 85-inch arms, which is always a good thing for an offensive lineman. especially if you want to try him at tackle. There's a potential that he could fit somewhere, or at least get an opportunity to try out the tackle position at the next level. Great athlete, someone that I think can get to the next level, can create contact at that level. Has quick feet, is good at getting into his sets as a pass protector. Good strength, functional strength, which is always good. Good anchor. He's not easily bull rushed. He just tends to struggle against your quicker, more twitchy pass rushers, but a guy that I think you could get at a value probably on day 3, maybe late day 2 at the earliest. Someone that I like, and like when you're looking at this team and the picks that they have, you're gonna have to get creative. If you're not gonna trade back and accumulate picks, then you've got to be you got to shoot for the stars, I think, with these picks a little bit. So you're taking risks on traits, and I think he's got enough traits to be enamored by, and so that's why I threw him on my list.
I like it. I have a couple, and so I'm actually going to pair these two together because I think they're fairly similar.
Okay.
And probably take it in the same place. So I think that the Broncos need help on the defensive front. I think they need some, guys with physical traits to be premium pass rushers that you can get, maybe in round 3, maybe 4 if things drop, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's 2 guys. So one is Rook Aurora.
Aurora. Yeah. I like Aurora just because I'm a nerd and I like X-Men, and that's Storm's name.
Yeah. Was originally born in Nigeria. Didn't start playing football until I think he was a junior. 6'3" or 6'4", 303, and then Leonard Taylor, the third, defensive tackle, inside, interior defensive lineman from Miami. Both guys are about the same, athletic, lean. The 6'3", 6'4", and anywhere between 300 and 305 pounds. So pretty similar. Both of them really have a ton of physical ability, but have underachieved a little bit in terms of statistical impact. But the tools are there. It's Malik Jackson a little bit when I think of kind of what the team would need. And I don't know about makeup or, nasty streak, but Malik physically had the gifts, right? Long arms, quick movements, good agility. And the Broncos really need that. I like some of the pieces that they got. I think Zach Allen is a good player. Henningsen, I think, can do some really good things. Obviously, if Mike Purcell comes back, huge presence there. But really need guys that can create some mismatches or win one-on-ones because there's just not a lot of them. Not a lot of them on this current roster, and you hope maybe that's addressed. But guy like that is both of those guys I really like. And part of it is because they have underachieved. So again, like you said, going for bang for your buck and really maximizing what you can get at this stage. So I'm counting them kind of as one player because I don't want to do a whole bunch of interior defensive linemen as all my people. And they're pretty much the same. They're about going to be taken in the same range. So I think if either of those guys were picked, round 3 by the Broncos, I feel real good about that.
Yeah. I like both of those guys. I considered adding either of them to my list. They didn't quite make the cut. There were some things that I really liked about both of them, and a lot of them had to do with their upside. But just I find the defensive tackle position really hard to scout from the college level projecting to the NFL because some of your most productive defensive linemen were not, big stat guys in college. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult. Like a guy like Michael Hall is all over people's draft radar as a defensive tackle. I watched Ohio State. I like Michael Hall a lot. I'm an Ohio State fan, so I've watched pretty much all their games for a long time. I'm not sure how his game, I think his motor and his try hard and his strength and all of there are some really great traits. It's just hard for me to kind of project what that looks like moving forward. And so I tended to stay away from D tackle, even though I'm intrigued by quite a few of them.
I agree. It's a hard position to make an immediate impact. So I don't know that you'd get stuff on day one for sure. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah. So I had to counter my Michigan selection with an Ohio State selection.
Okay.
It's just, this is me compensating, and I'm okay with that. But it's actually a player that I am really intrigued by, and that's Cade Stover, tight end for Ohio State. Probably a
yeah. I want to know more. I've seen a little bit of him, but I haven't dove in. And he's a guy that looks like mid-tier selection, but could be, has some of the, at least from what I've gathered. But I really am excited about hearing about this one.
Yeah. So I think that Cade Stover is probably athletically not super exciting for a lot of people. He's, I think 6'3" or 6'4", about 250 pounds, good size. You look at him, he's built strong and sturdy. But, as far as athletic traits, I don't know how well he'll test with the combine and pro days coming up. We'll see. I think that remains to be seen. I read somewhere that he clocked like a 4.55 40-yard dash. That's pretty good for a guy that size at the tight end position. So I'll be interested to see if he can approach those numbers. On film, I wouldn't say he looks particularly fast. He's a guy that is extremely reliable in the passing game, gets downfield, knows how to use his body as a former basketball player. Those guys know how to shield, against defenders, use their body in a way that, football players don't always know how to do, especially as pass catchers. He creates enough separation that he can be a pain to cover. It's not necessarily with quick twitch or anything like that, but just kind of a good feel for where his guy is and kind of how to create the separation. Great concentration, great hands. That's something that you see a lot of guys that have a lot of high-end potential. I think you think of guys like Vernon Davis that were freak athletes, but weren't always sure-handed guys. I think Stover's extremely sure-handed, someone that I would feel comfortable throwing a ball up to if he had a little bit of separation. I would expect him to come down with that. Probably a little bit raw in pass protection and blocking game, but I think he's got the physical tools to grow into that. And I think it's more just an underdeveloped trait as opposed to a completely missing trait. Like, I think he is a willing blocker. It just has to be, his technique needs to be honed in a little bit. I don't know, just someone, I think that he's clutch, and I like that. There were so many times he was moving the chains in clutch situations for the Buckeyes over the years. Just seems to have a good feel for where he is and what's needed in a moment. And I think those are some intangible things that you can't really quantify on paper. And so I'm excited to kind of see his path and trajectory. I have a feeling that some teams will probably fall in love with him. He may get drafted a little bit higher than he's projected to, just because he speaks a lot about his childhood and growing up on a farm and kind of the pride that he takes in that lifestyle. I think, that resonates with a lot of people, and just his ability to do hard work and not shy away from that sort of thing. So there's a lot to like about him, again, from an athletic profile, probably not the top of that tight end class for sure, but has enough really good, solid, and high level pass catching traits that make me intrigued.
Yeah, I like that. I think staying in line for pass catchers, Xavier Leggett, wide receiver out of South Carolina. I think there's like question about whether or not he might transfer or if he was gonna. So I think it's interesting for a guy that I think projected second or third round pick. Not sure what he would gain. Only one really good season of production, but tools are there. Like 6'1", 6'2", about 220. So the guy's a tank, and has really good speed, strong hands, and produced in an offense that wasn't that great against some really good talent in the SEC. playing for South Carolina, hasn't been, known as necessarily like an offensive juggernaut for some time, that's for sure. So I'm really excited about what he could bring. I think the Broncos will be in the market, obviously, for a receiver. I assume that they will move on from either or both Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton here in the upcoming weeks. And so to do so, I think bringing in some young guys who have maybe similar builds to some of the guys that you're looking for. I think Sean Payton's offense works really well when you have big, strong slant receiver and, quick over the top receiver. You got one in Marvin Mims that you hope kind of continues to grow into that, and then really looking for a complementary piece. So I like what I saw from him. I think he'll be a guy that because of the 1-year status, where he produced, will probably be able to be had a little bit later than maybe he should.
Yeah. I like him as a prospect as well. I think he's intriguing. I need to do a little more deep dive on him just to kind of get a good feel for his game overall, but definitely has some traits that are exciting that I would take a risk on. My last one, this is my biggest draft crush so far, is a linebacker out of Texas A&M named Edrin Cooper.
Yeah, nice pick.
Edrin Cooper is an athletic freak. He's about 6'3", 230. He's got 80-inch arms, so he's got extremely long arms. He's just kind of a long-limbed guy. He runs about a 4.5 40-yard dash. I'm excited about his physicality of play. I think that's probably what most people see when they have watched him. Dude comes downhill hard and finds gaps well and is able to cover the running back and tight ends in the majority of cases. I just my excitement about him is more about his ability to just cover those guys as opposed to like his pass rushing or downhill potential. Like, we haven't had a linebacker that's been really great in coverage for quite a while. I think he has potential to be that. And that is what has me most excited about him. It's hard to kind of quantify exactly where he would land on a team, but if you compare him down the line with Drew Sanders at some point, that's a pretty freakishly athletic linebacker core, whether they play inside or outside. You get some athletes at that next level, and that's exciting. I think that's something that you can build off of, whether, it would look very different than what we have right now with Singleton and Jewell, which are your pretty prototypical middle linebacker duo, solid, not intrinsically athletic dudes per se, but don't over pursue. They're really careful. They make sure they know where the ball is. They have a nose for the ball, as opposed to these guys who are, a guy like Drew Sanders and Edrin Cooper. Those are guys that are going to be all over the field. Those are guys that are going to be active at all levels. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about a potential linebacker core that just has some elite athletic traits. I think that's something that's been missing. And kind of a hard-nosed, the Broncos have been known for hard-nosed defense for a long time. I think they're missing a bit of that edge right now. And so it'd be nice to bring in someone who is a potential day one pick. I probably more, second or third round, probably more a second round guy than third round guy. But man, the traits are there. Like, again, if we're gambling on traits, Cooper is someone that I would gamble on 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I am kind of all for them bringing in some youth, whether that's Cedric Gray, linebacker from North Carolina, really good athlete. I'm not as high on Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I think he's a good player, but really had an opportunity to step up and didn't quite. But Peyton Wilson at NC State.
I like Peyton Wilson a lot. He's fun.
Yeah, he's tremendous. Let me look at what was his stat line last
year? I feel like
year?
he's a little undersized.
138 tackles, 17.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 picks, and 6 pass breakups last season. Yeah, 6'4", 235 he's listed, but probably like 220. All that kind of stuff.
He doesn't look that big on tape, at least.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. So, but having an influx of top tier physical talent, I think it's why I went with the guys I went up front. I think that this team really needs it. Leggett is a physical kind of marvel at his size and build, and so I think it's bringing in some guys that really can be playmakers, that can make plays that other guys can't. I think is huge for this team. So with that, I'm not going to go offensive lineman because we need them all. So that's not necessarily where I'll go with this, but I'm going to go with receiver out of Western Kentucky. So Malachi Corley, AKA the Yak God. A guy he gets the ball in his hands is a nightmare, and the guy is able to score or make plays from anywhere on the field. Really explosive, super tough. I think his contact balance was pretty impressive, and just ability to make some plays. And when you have an opportunity to draft an offensive weapon that you can move around and get good production out of, inside, outside, slot, swing them around on jets or some of those things. We just haven't had dynamic playmakers where you have to know where that guy is all the time. And, it would be nice. It would be nice if we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to finish out today. We had a question in the chat from Mark. Thanks, Mark. We'll probably be talking about this every pod from here until the draft. Who do Broncos pick at 12? If you had a year away, who would they pick?
I think as it sits now, if I had my way, out of names or opportunities that I think could happen, I think it would be JJ McCarthy. I think you got me. The more that I've looked at some of his tape, he actually threw the ball about as many times or close to what Jaden Daniels did this year.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of look at the comparable stuff, actually pretty comparable. It's more when you see the difference in rush it, but they ran the ball a ton and scored a lot. So it's not, that was an offensive identity. McCarthy still got reps and enough reps, I think, to give you a good idea of what his strengths and weaknesses are. So that would be my pick at 12, as we sit now. What about you?
Yeah. I think McCarthy, but I would like to say that I was on this bandwagon before Broncos.
You were first. I am a late adopter. I will acknowledge and pay homage towards where it is. So thank you, conductor. And I appreciate you letting me on the train.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. I wonder if he'll be there at 12 though, with how much.
I wonder. I mean, I wonder too. I don't
up.
know that he would be, but.
And I wonder, but I also wonder if that causes someone else to fall. If Jaden Daniels slips a little bit because someone like McCarthy more. I think that those top three, if you throw McCarthy in that mix, top four guys, I think you've got some really solid prospects up there. How they'll shake out, I'm not exactly certain at the moment. I think you're probably, your Drake May and your Caleb Williams are probably closer to locks than Jaden Daniels and McCarthy, but I could see all of them being successful. And so it makes it really difficult to kind of suss through, what traits you like more in one or the other. So it'll be interesting to see if he's even there at 12, or if someone decides to make a move to come up and get him. There's going to be teams that are willing to move down in front of, before 12 to get a quarterback if they think that's their franchise guy. And so, there's a potential if the Broncos want McCarthy and someone's really hot on him that they've got to either make a move to go get him or they've got to be okay watching him pass by. And then at that point, it's hard. I don't really love this first round talent of this draft as far as defense goes. I think there's a lot of questionable guys,
there's a lot of good, not great guys.
Yeah. And so I like, like your Jared Verse. I'm intrigued by him. I think he could be a good player. I don't know what his ceiling is, same with Johnny Newton, Jerzon Newton. Love his size, love his ability to disrupt off the defensive line. not sure how many snaps you'll get him a game just based on his size and his ability in general. You know, is he a rotational guy, like a high-end rotational guy? That's kind of hard to say. And so I tend to lean more
if you're taking a guy at 12 or around there, you want impact day one. He's starting.
Yeah.
And a guy that will anchor or be a solid contributor on whatever side of the ball that is. Yeah. I concur. I think it's a tough spot right there. It'll be good players, but not elite players, probably.
And I just don't see some of those guys falling that I would hope would fall, like a Neighbors or a Brock Bowers, someone like that, where I'm just, someone that I'm extremely excited about offensively too. I think those guys are going to get snatched up. And so it kind of leaves Denver in a place where maybe I'd rather see them trade back ultimately and pick up a top end interior offensive lineman, something like that. So I think the as it always does, the combine and the testing will start to separate guys, and maybe we'll start to get a better feel for who will actually be available. Right now, I just don't know that any of those guys will be there. But I would say JJ McCarthy, if he's there, I would be totally fine with that pick and excited about the potential.
Yeah, I think that they will move back. Mark, getting Drake May would be dope.
It would be dope for sure.
I think that they'll move back. I think that they'll address. I think interior offensive line. Jackson Powers. You welcome to
Jackson
being
Powers,
the long-term center for the Denver Broncos. Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, etc. Sean Payton has value to the interior offensive line, so I wouldn't be shocked to see some high-end draft capital used there if you move back to 22, 24, get a pick or two by doing so in the on day two. And you draft a 10-year starter. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I hope that they are able to get a quarterback of the future just for excitement and vision and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, I want them to take a good player and someone that's going to, push to make a Pro Bowl for the next decade. And I think the interior offensive line is where they can make some of those picks. So there's some pretty good players later, too. So I bet we will get some offensive linemen toting the orange and blue from the draft here this year.
Yeah, and I think even with tackles, right, I think the top two are pretty solidly in the probably top 10, 15 picks. And then, it kind of gets a little more dicey from there. You've got some guys that project as good right tackles, but not necessarily good left tackles. It kind of just depends on team need at that point, or what you're willing to move off of to make those guys fit into your scheme. And so it is a tricky, I think 12 is better than some of the other positions, but I think it's hard because if you draft an interior offensive lineman at 12, the questions are immediately going to be about value. Like, was that the best pick for that value? And so, I'll be.
Yeah, but you saw with Detroit last year. You know what?
Yeah.
Value, right? Like, what kind of team do you want? What kind of culture you want? And I think you and I would agree, if they made the error of drafting just a whole bunch of offensive and defensive linemen in this draft to get not only some strong depth, but some improved play from some younger, cheaper contracts.
Yeah.
That would be exciting. I'm a build in the trenches guy. I think everyone looks better when you got 5 offensive linemen that can do good work. Running backs, for some reason, seem to find holes more, and your quarterback has more time to throw. And same if you can stop those because of your guys up front without bringing extra pressure. You're going to find success more often and pretty quick. Average skill players look better when an offensive line and defensive line are playing pretty good. So restocking those shelves, I would be all for. If I saw 7 picks and all of them were up front with a tight end, sweet. Sweet.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to the Drake May thing, I just think it costs too much right now. Like the Broncos just don't have enough assets, I think, unless you're willing to really mortgage the future and go up and get them, which they might be willing to do. I think
if they were in a better salary cap position,
right,
it's not awful. So they can move with like 5 deals, they can move like 60 million off, and the cap is meh. But at some point it will catch up to you, as it did Sean Payton in New Orleans. So if they had a different cap situation, right, where they had more money to be able to keep good players or go get some more, then I think I would be all for, YOLO, F them picks, because you have cash to be able to bring in talent, because they won't have that maneuverability and have made some bad moves. They really do need cheap, controllable, young talent to build some depth on this roster. And hopefully you find a couple diamonds in the rough until you kind of get out of cap purgatory.
And the problem is, like, you're going to have to mortgage your future of picks. And, like, I would like to think they could do it by adding some players that are going to have expiring contracts. If you can throw in a Jerry Jeudy or a Garrett Bowles, someone like that. But I don't really know how much value they hold kind of in the NFL, just kind of the overall picture. Yep. I think they're probably middling interest guys, not high interest guys. And, if you're going to move up to number 2, presumably, maybe even number 1, depending on how things shake out, to get Drake May, then, I mean, you're getting rid of future picks, for probably this year, next year, and maybe the years beyond. And so I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it, because I value those picks so much. And maybe this is Sean Payton will just go balls to the wall and just say, this is the guy I want. Let's make it happen. Doesn't matter who's going out. This is the guy we got coming in, and that's it. But I think more realistically, they need an infusion of young talent. And so, and like you said, controllable contracts. But we've gone way over time, so we're going to cut it here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Mark, thanks for jumping in and giving us your comments and feedback. We appreciate everyone. Always, we do this with you, for you, and just enjoy it so very much. Make sure you interact with us on Twitter. Individually, you can visit the Mile High Sports Symposium Twitter page and just ask us questions or just throw us a DM. We love to talk all sports with you. But thank you again. Have a good night. And if you need a prescription for your sports, then make sure you ask a doctor.
Boom.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard for the car, so that's why it's all